BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hi, I'm Geraint Thomas, Tour de France winner and the pod's official cycling friend. I'll be back in a bit with a question for Crouchy, but for now, a quick warning. The following podcast contains some strong language and adult themes, so you've been warned. Crack on, boys.
Crouchy P on the MIC. We're doing this just for free.
Do you give it the sniff test? Peter, come do the quiz.
Feel a little bit like Dirty Den.
You and your two silly little mates.
Silly little mates, just wrap it up.
Is it weird doing one of these whilst wearing clothes?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're cruising at 2,400 feet.
Let's free the ketchup.
So much to get off my chest.
And you've always had magnificent teeth.
How bad have things got?
It's going downhill now, isn't it?
The nation will be back stronger. Hello and welcome to another episode of That Peter Crouch podcast with me, Peter Crouch. I'm working from home again. My two silly mates are here, Tom Fordyce and Chris Stark. You right, boys?
Yeah, all the better for doing the podcast. Chris, you've just moved house. You've got a totally different backdrop.
Does look a bit more plush, I have to say. And you've got the biggest microphone I think I've. It's bigger than your head.
Cheers, mate.
What's the deal with that?
It's the best I can do. The thing is, yeah, I've moved house. I'll tell you what I've got. I've got a garage.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to turn this into, it's like a proper garage. We need some sort of Nick Knowles character or someone like that to pop up with DIY SOS, but I'm not really bothered about him touching the house. It's more just the garage. The vibe I would like to go for, and this sounds a little bit David Brent, is gym/studio/man cave. Things with Nick Knowles, he'll only come to your house if you've got a good reason to get him there. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be something bad has got to happen.
Could you set fire to your garage, do like a controlled fire?
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I'd love to turn it into a cave.
You know what I've got? I've got loads of shirts that I've got two of, you know, so I don't mind giving them away. No, because, you know, like when you play for England and stuff, you get two shirts.
Do you? Why?
Yeah, I used to change my shirts at half time, yeah. Most players do. You usually get two shirts for every game. So you have the name of the game engraved on the shirt, and I have two. So for any of the ones that I have two, I'm happy to give away. So
would it not be a bit weird, Chris? Because like let's Crouchy, you haven't put any of these shirts up at your house, but if you did, then there's a legitimacy to it because you have played in that shirt. Like for you, Chris, are you just going to display someone else's shirts? You know what I mean?
Tom, what are you on about? That's like saying that could go with anything. That's like saying why on earth do you sign your books and things like that?
Yeah, but I can see behind Tom. I can see behind Tom now. You can see Geraint Thomas's jockstrap in a frame, and you know,
getting him to sign that was a nightmare. It's not that big.
He's got Froome's sweaty lycra on the wall.
Hey, it was nice to have a cyclist on the pod, isn't it? And the question he's got for you boys later. I know you two have got quite into your cycling during lockdown. You've been enjoying a few cheeky little rides. I think you'll enjoy it. That's all I'm going to say.
I got a feeling that you and him have been chatting. That's my suspicion.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see. Our guest this week, boys, is Sean Dyche. Crouchy, you were quite nervous when we had one of your previous managers on, when we had Mr. Poulis on. Are you nervous today? How are you feeling?
I'm not nervous. I love him. I absolutely love him as a person. I loved him as a manager. I'm a big fan of Sean Dyche, yeah. So, but the only thing is like I'm not. It's weird, you know, what to call him. I know that obviously, like we sort of met through Serge and Kasabian, and like we're all sort of, like decent mates now. I'd say. I think Dyche is. It's not. I'm not quite there yet. You know. I think he's still gaffer.
He strikes me as the kind of person that you cross him and he's absolutely fucking terrifying. So I'm not really sure how to approach it because I think he's a legend.
So's Tony Pulis. You know, like he's one of the nicest fellas that I've come across in football, Tony Pulis. But you know, you cross him or you're not pulling in the right direction for his team. You know, he's coming down on you, and that's why they're successful managers. I think you have to have that kind of edge to you.
Who's got the worst temper out of those two, out of Dyche and Poulis?
I'd say Pulis. I think when he goes, he goes. Listen, it is great to have people like Louis Theroux, Sean Dyche keeping us company on the podcast. I mean, it's top people. I said like Louis Theroux, as you know, we're big fans in this household. So to get him on was lovely.
Has Ab spoken about it much?
She was a little bit worried that she embarrassed herself a touch. She didn't want to come across as a bit of a stalker, it was touch and go, wasn't it, at one stage?
It was a bit such. She's not bought you a pair of black rim glasses, has she? And asked you to
Yeah.
start
What
wearing them
happened that
around the
night,
house?
Crouchy, when you went up to bed straight after the podcast? Because it was a late one, wasn't it? We recorded quite late.
It was one of those where you just sort of like said, "You all right?" He says,
Yeah.
"You all right?"
I quite like the idea that you become a little bit more Louis through.
She's asking her like really intense questions.
Do you know what I'm going to do one night? I'm going to go upstairs. We should all do it. All three of us. Record the conversation, right? But I'm going to talk as if it's the end of a match,
Yeah.
and
Right.
just like...
Right, let's have a practice.
I'm so up for this.
Crouchy, let's help him prep on this then. So, right,
Oh,
I'll
sorry.
play Mrs. Crouch. You smell of beer. You've got a kebab on your top. What on earth have you been?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a tough evening. I think we held our own for a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it was one sloppy mistake and the kebab went down my face.
Yeah, we've got to do this.
I've had a terrible day. I feel really fat and unattractive.
Okay, this is always a difficult
Bloody
one.
hell.
It's a difficult one to navigate. Yeah, I've, you have come back, from the off-season break, slightly larger than normal. But we're going to work hard during pre-season and we'll have you playing for England by the end of it.
Oh, nice lift at the end.
Yeah, that's what Crouchy does. He always it spins round. It's like a boomerang. It goes back round and it somehow comes back, not back stronger necessarily, but back slightly more positive. It's incredible.
I'm going to give you one more. You promised me you'd be back by midnight. It's 4 a.m.
Yeah, well, we struggled towards the end, fitness-wise. It was a long evening. But yeah, I mean, we managed to hang on and we got the result we needed. But it was a hard slog and, we're going to rest up and we'll be back stronger next week.
This is so good. There's going to be guys and girls all over the UK when they go to bed in the evening and you're dealing with difficult questions. Just imagine that you're Peter Crouch and you're deflecting the tricky questions. I wish we could record a load of these. There's got to be a way we can do it.
Crouchy's done the robot again because it's 100 Premier League goals for Peter Crouch.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
So I think it's time, boys, we spoke to our guest today. So we had Louis Through on last week, who's one of Abby's top 3 favourite people. So we've decided to get another one of Abby's top 3 favourite people, Crouchy.
Yeah, it's my old gaffer, Sean Dyche. How are you, mate?
Big man, how you going, lads? How are you?
How do we refer to you on this podcast? Is it Dyche or Sean or Gaffer? What's the correct way?
Seriously, right, when you got ginger ale, I've been called that many names and I respond to virtually all of them. So whatever you say, I'm probably going to respond to and probably know that you're aiming it at me.
He's still gaffer for me, I think.
No, to be fair, mate, so most of my old managers, when I see them now and again, I do end up probably saying Gaffer more than their name. And then what about that weird ground when you call them one and you think, I don't know if I should have called him that.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, did you just call me Steve?
So you two met. This is an amazing story. You two first met at Serge's wedding. Crouchy, was this the point where you started angling for a move and you just whisper in Sean's ear, listen, I'm coming to the end of my contract at Stoke. Fancy it?
Yeah, it was at Serge's wedding. We had a good chat. Nothing came of it then. We were just having a chat about football, really. But I think it was when we went to the Isle of Wight Festival. I think it was Abby who became my agent, started saying, you've got to sign him. Thankfully, he did. I loved my time at Burnley. I was so glad that I ended up there because what had happened at Stoke, it was just, the change room wasn't the same and, lots of characters had been brought in and it wasn't the same as it was. And I went to Burnley and finished my career there and it was just a harmonious dressing room. The lads were great. Obviously, they got on great with the gaffer. The whole club was run properly and it was a lovely way to finish my career.
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on. We met at Serge when they said I'd kind of known Serge later than Crouchy, so I didn't get the day do, I only got the evening do. So I was like the hanger-on who turned up later.
No.
So yeah. But there is a funny incident that happened at Serge's do though, because this is my surreal moment at Serge's wedding, other than the big man being sensible. Really, we were chatting about football and life and all that sort of stuff. Was me, Serge, and Danny Dyer in the back of a taxi doing like a video. Danny Dyer asked me to do a team talk, so I did a team talk into the video with Danny Dyer, Serge. Danny, it's fair to say, had a couple of lager shandies, I felt. I might be wrong with that, but I thought he'd had a couple of lager shandies, let's say. Serge was just wetting himself, and I'm just sitting there, just going, in my head, obviously going, I don't believe what this is. But anyway, surreal memory. I believe Serge has got it. I believe Serge has got it. He's got my team talk in the back of a London taxi being videoed with Danny Dyer and Serge.
Oh, do you know what? I missed out on that. I was too busy DJing. I cleared the dance floor that night. Got up because no one was on the deck, so I got up there and I've got a few tunes on and everyone left.
Wedding DJing's trickier than you'd think, but I'm pleased you experienced it, Crouchy.
Well, yeah, listen, I'm at someone who's headlined Glastonbury. I'm at their wedding, so they obviously know a thing or two about music. But I just thought, it's not a wedding without Common Eileen. So,
Good shout.
It's not, is it?
Good shout.
So that's what I was going for, the old wedding tunes, and they didn't go down too well.
With the Isle of Wight festival, was that the point, Sean? Was that the point where you decided you were going to sign Crouchy? Because that's amazing.
Well, it's probably a two-way thing. He was probably thinking, right, the gaffer's an interesting fella at the Isle of Wight festival. Let's say that. It's a true story. So when you're with Serge, right, you think that you're going to probably be looked after, but then Serge said to me, no, Crouchy's going to sort us out. And when you're confused, you're thinking, hang on, you're the main man, and yet Crouchy's looking after you, who's looking after us. So we were sort of at the bottom of the food chain. We got a few beers, and then we got escorted back to an even better place, which was like the VIP place. And then lo and behold, the owner's suite inside the VIP place with Crouchy. So he's already half getting signed just from them contacts. You know what I mean? I thought he's got a chance, this kid, because I like music. I like a couple of scoops. And I thought, I'm halfway into everywhere here. So I thought, well, okay, let's keep that one on the back burner. Joking, but we'd had a chat, earlier on before we got mangled, obviously. And then chatting with the missus and just, the ifs and ands, saying, look, if it comes around, if it worked, would you do it? Yeah, like the idea of it. And then it just came around. It just worked. Sam Vokes was in the deal. I said, look, I'd love Crouchy to come as part of that deal. And it worked for us as well. It worked with Crouchy being who he is around the lads, enjoyed our lads as well as them enjoying him, on the pitch being that threat that he was. And just kind of, I would have loved him to have stayed, he knows that, but we had a good chat about his future. And I said, look, I think there's a lot more out there for you. And it might be better to do it while you're hot, rather than fade away sort of thing and come out of it. And then sometimes, your media chances may be different. So we had a good chat about it. But the whole timeline was quite an enjoyable experience, actually. There's not many players that I've sort of half signed when I'm getting mangled at a gig. So that was quite a nice.
I saw the weakness and preyed on him.
The weakness, I'll make it clear to anyone who's listening, my weakness is free stuff. Especially if it involves gigs and drinks. If it's free stuff, then I'm in. You've got a chance. Don't worry about that. I'm partial to free stuff.
Wow. And your musical tastes are quite eclectic, aren't they?
Yeah, when I was younger, music was beginning to shift, as you'll well know, and kind of the Manchester scene. So I used to go up to the Hacienda, and then it kind of morphed into rave scene. So me and a load of the lads, we used to get on that one. So yeah, I was really into that. But I've got two older brothers, you see. I'd heard all the punk scene, the mod scene, the ska scene, the new romantic scene, going into the dance scene. So I like a bit of all of it.
I love this idea of you being in a rave club with like white gloves and like a glow stick between your fingers.
Dancing, definitely. I still love dancing, right? Everyone buzzes off this, but I still love dancing. The lads, when we got promoted the second time, we had a big do at my mate's place in London, and I was properly rinsing it. I was cutting shapes all over the place. And I think Michael Keane videoed me, and he sent it to me during lockdown. I sent out a few clips from old games that we were having banter. And he sent back no words, nothing, just this clip of me dancing after we got promoted. I was buzzing off it properly, and I mean properly having it. It was proper, and I really enjoyed it.
What's your dance style? Do you bring a little bit of Big Fish, Little Fish cardboard box, a bit more Happy Mondays Bears? What's your vibe?
Yeah, a bit of all of that. Just throwing it out there. You know what I mean? No inhibitions. I do have a proper go. I don't try and style it out or call it out. Just like the big overbite on the top lip. You know what I mean?
Hey, Dyche, gaffer, Sean.
Oh, by the way, Crouchy's just Dyche me off. See how quickly it rubs off.
Yeah, look at him. Look.
Gaffer, and then it ends up being Dyche. Look, we're not mates, Seriously, you're just a podcast mate. You're not a real mate.
He's one of the two silly little mates.
I'm scared.
Have you seen his Watford shirt as well?
I have.
Mate,
Well, he'll know
nice one.
that I captained the Mighty Hornets for a spell.
Yeah, happy memories. It was sort of like what we see as fans, as you and a manager. You were still like that, it feels, when you were a player. It was kind of like no nonsense, physical. Fans loved you, of course, didn't they?
Talking of you as a player, we had a question come in last week of all the Premier League managers now who would get in your starting 11. I had a back three of you, Steve Bruce and Nigel Pearson. I don't think too many people will mess with that back three.
No, I think we'd be solid. Good talkers, strong aerially. I didn't mind adding it, to be fair. Yeah. And I'd like to think can play a bit more than people think. That's what I'd say.
Chris, I don't know if you've seen this, but Sean has taken in his career one of the great penalties. So this is Chesterfield Borough. It's the FA Cup semi-final 1997. So there's an amazing clip, isn't there, Chris? You've probably seen this, Crouchy, you're familiar with this, where Chesterfield get the penalty. Sean, you've never taken a penalty at this point, have you? You haven't scored for 4 years. And then John Duncan, your manager, is just on the touchline. You can just see him going, Dyche.
You know, deep down you're thinking, flipping out, it's going to be me. And so I'm looking around. I remember saying to Jamie Hewitt, who obviously scored the famous equaliser, I said to Jamie Hewitt, because he struck a good ball, Jamie, and I said, Jamie, do you want it? Are you going to take it? And he went, I'll take it, but I don't really fancy it. And I went, well, that's useful. What a great line that is. I thought, cheers.
I'll take it, but I don't really fancy it.
I know. I went, brilliant. I said, good honesty, but not now, mate. You could give me that honesty later in the bar. You know what I mean? So, and you think, right, okay, I'm captain, got to do it. I never wanted to take it. I've never took any glory from it. I remember, though, thinking, one thing I was clear on, just strike through it. Don't worry about the rest of it. Don't try to be clever. Don't try to be fancy. And as I was walking, I was absolutely clear-minded in that. Head over the ball, like when you're a child and your first coach is saying, keep your shoulders over the ball, keep your head over the ball. I remember just thinking, just strike it clean. And I did it, just had a nice little foot off the ground to get over the keeper's legs in case he got lucky with it. And then ran off going mental.
It was at Old Trafford as well, wasn't it? Because I never mentioned to the players about it. Yeah, no, I had because I took a pen. I think it might be the same end, Stretford end. I wish I had that mentality where you said strike through the ball, don't do anything stupid or anything fancy.
I tried everything but, didn't you? It was like I did the total opposite.
Absolutely the exact opposite of that mentality. I went for a Panenka. I went for a dink. I was on a hat trick straight over the top of the crossbar. It was one of the worst moments of my life.
What's it like when you're a manager, right? And then you've got a player like Crouchy who dicks about on a penalty and attempts something like that. Like, how do you react? Is that a bollocking offence, that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah.
No, it's punch him in his face. You know the truth of it, right? As a manager, say it's just Crouchy, right? And I'm managing him, and I see him practicing that penalty all the time. I'd go with it. I think, do you know what? It's your stock penalty. You've practiced stuff. I've seen you on the triangle. I've practiced 100 times. The bit that kills you as a manager is when, for some reason, phantomly, players do this thing where they try something in the game and you're like, what are you doing, you absolute flipping idiot? Why would you do that?
But the thing is with those like Panenka type penalties is, quite often it's a safe penalty because 9 times out of 10 the keeper moves. But if I'd have got the technique correct, which is not a hard technique, just to chip it into the middle of the goal, it would have gone in.
Crouchy, while we're on penalties, just a little insight. I've just thought of one because I loved it. Graham Alexander, great football. I loved him in his career. He played like 950 games, ridiculous. And he sort of had a really weird style where he'd run it almost straight and he'd hit it like penalty, the side of his foot, the middle of his foot. Yeah, really tough to read. So I said to him, how did you come across that? And he just brought up a really simple thing. He said, you know what? He said, early in a game, the keeper might take the chance of standing dead still. So he said, if I get an early penalty, maybe 60 minutes and under, I'd go wide to him. He said, if it was late, it takes an unbelievably brave keeper to stand dead still in the middle of a goal late in a game without diving. So he said, late on, I just smash it down the middle. And I thought, genius. I thought, just dead common sense. I thought, he's right. Fair play. I also heard when the Germans apparently went through their list of players when they did penalties, and they'd have 2 stock penalties, and they'd actually tell them to take the pressure away from them rather than then make a decision. The coach would say, your penalty is bottom right. And then he'd go to the next one, your penalty is top left because that's what you do. And they'd just monitor it.
Great shout.
Well, because it defuses it, doesn't it? It defuses the pressure on the player. So as manager, I'm taking the pressure for you. Don't worry about anything else. You just deliver that. I'll take anything that comes. If they save it, it's my fault. I thought it was genius.
That's
That's
amazing. I've never thought
Now-
of penalties.
That makes
like
a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
I
I
like
was,
that.
I, was,
Yes.
I was buzzing off it when I heard it, and now I've just told you, and because this is a successful podcast, now the world will know, and I've nicked that secret, and I've told you. I can't believe it. What am I doing? See, that's
Ashley
how
Barnes will
stupid
miss
I
3
am.
in a row.
You're not wrong, yeah.
Hey, Ben Roberts
Wow.
dived out the way of your one, didn't he? The Borough keeper. When you've gone down the middle, Ben Roberts, in the pressure of an FA Cup semi-final, he's not stood his ground. He's gone off to his left.
Yeah, but trust me, there's no method to mine. Just crack it as hard as you can and hope for the best and pray that it goes in. You know what I mean? There's no deep thought other than hit it.
Also, in sort of preparing for football coming back, I was reading this thing about Brendan Rodgers making all the Leicester lads watch certain Netflix shows. I think it was the Michael Jordan documentary. Have you been issuing similar sort of homework, or do you just kind of leave him to it? Or?
No, homework and football is not a good mixture in my experience. Might have it wrong. We were saying, go and relax, lads. Look after your families. I wasn't requiring them to watch anything particularly. I think most sports people or people who like sport would have watched The Last Dance, so I don't think I really needed to instruct them on that. You know, probably one of the best I've seen. I enjoyed Normal People, you know. I thought that was terrific. I enjoyed that. You know, I thought it was
It's a bit
brilliant.
weird he's got his cock out, though, isn't it? Like that.
Well,
that
what,
threw me
I thought this is a
bit.
family show. Is this not a family show, Crouchy? Crouchy, what was signed up for? What's going on here?
We have a language warning at the start, you know, so then you can
okay.
say what you like now.
That's all right. Okay. Free for all. I was using the word flipping earlier. People would look at me and go, flipping? Did he just say flipping? Did Sean Dyche just say flipping? So, okay, yeah, well, I wasn't really too worried about that part of it, but if it was meant a lot to you, that's fine.
No, it's not. It's not that it meant a lot to me. It was just I haven't seen it in full. I didn't fully understand the plot of it. Have you seen?
You haven't
this,
seen it in
Crouchy?
full.
Yeah,
You haven't seen
I've
it in
seen
full.
it.
Let me stop there. There's a line for you. Why did you say that?
I was worried about Dyche coming on. I knew I was going to be target.
I enjoyed it. I have seen it. It was good. I mean, it was one of those where, you know, your missus puts it on. I don't think anyone, it's not something that I would go and watch myself, but as soon as she puts it on, I was in.
The Last Dance was terrific. I mean, let's face it, that's awesome.
Have you seen the Diego Maradona one in Naples, in Napoli?
Terrific. That is terrific. Yeah, great show. That is terrific. I saw that before lockdown when it first came out, though, and that's so raw, isn't it? So raw and real, and you just think, all the ugly side of, you know, his life and what he was trying to go through, and some of the stuff you knew sort of what was going on, you know, from the rumours, but you didn't know until you knew, you know, and when you saw it, you thought, that is unbelievable. You forget that time. Imagine that being that big, no social media, nothing. And yet,
unbelievable,
crowds everywhere, just like enormous how powerful he was an individual. What a player. I remember the one with Gentile, like all over him like a rash, and even just,
That's the Italy-Argentina game in '82 where Gentile fouls him 23 times in the match, doesn't get booked.
I was so proud of Gentile that day. I mean, what?
Yeah, he's right up your alley.
Do you think he was the best ever? When you watch that Maradona documentary, I know it's really easy. You watch any player and you're instantly convinced they were the best ever. I watched that and I just thought, this has almost ended the argument for me, this. I think he was the best ever.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because the lads now, right, Messi and Ronaldo, unreal. I mean, you know, unbelievable what they can do, what they can give to the game. But it is an era where now it is very forward friendly, you know, forward thinking players. I know they've designed it that way with the rules, by the way, but back then it was a defender's game. You know, defender could give you a clout early on. I mean, I was a bit later, to be fair. I was 90s, so the world of football was changing. But you go back 10 years before that into the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, middle 80s even, and it was brutal. Some of the stuff then. You know, you look back at it and you think, wow, you know what, these guys were playing in an era when it was very difficult to be a technical player and deliver the level of performance they were delivering and affecting teams. I mean, Maradona was carrying teams at that time. You know, he's just awesome. You know, but I think so. Unbelievable players that there are now, but I do think that was a very, very difficult era to be a top player in, because you just got marked and just got smashed all over the place usually.
We've talked about how we, I came to sign for you. But what I found at Burnley is obviously all the lads are top players, very good players, but also the characters. I don't think there's a bad character among them. I just found that, you know, certainly coming from the Stoke dressing room where recruitment went downhill and culminated in relegation, to coming to the Burnley dressing room and seeing everyone just pulling together in the same direction. Like, how key is the character of a player for you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of misperception about what we do at Burnley. And then you get this weird thing that the media, they'll say to me, yeah, but you only really sign, good types. And I'm like, who doesn't want to sign good types? I mean, I've got players who I've spoke to the head of education about them. What are they like when they're at college? What are they like as people? What were they like when they were 14? What were they like when they were 16, 18, 20, 21? What were they like when they signed their first big contract? Did they turn into a tool, or did they just stay focused? Were they still doing the job they needed to be doing? So, all right, so the obvious one that everyone, forgets about, because it's apparently only signed good types, is Joey. Now, it turned out that Joey Barton is a good type. He just needs the guidelines to work from, but one of the guidelines is a professional outfit who works properly. And we feel we do. And my staff, by the way, not just me, I mean the whole outfit. So he bought into that. So therefore, ends up being a really good character, or deemed a really good character. Got on famously with the staff, famously with the players, massive amount of respect for Joey. And then you get other lads who are just really good. I mean, Crouchy, been around the Premier League for years, vastly underrated player for me, and as a lad, just a top lad. If I was his parents, I'd be super proud of people like that. He can handle the fact he's got, done nicely for himself. He can handle the fact he was ex-Chelsea. He can handle the fact he's worked hard at his career. And he puts all the work in that it takes, you know what I mean? So amongst loads of them that we've had down the years, and they've gone on. Michael Keane's and one off a terrific young pro, Kieran Trippier, what Ings has done. I mean, he had some tough injuries, but still a good player. Charlie Austin, all these lads have all given something to Burnley Football Club. I'm not saying it wins you a game, but it gives you a better chance if you've got all noses pointing in the right direction, including the staff. If there's cracks in my staff, I can assure you they'll be getting the curly finger and go, whoa, we don't undermine each other here.
They're going to get what? The curly finger?
Yeah, what's the curly finger?
Well, Crouchy, the old curly finger, like hey, and they know when you get the curly finger, it's like, oh no.
The coach will come in. This used to happen at Stoke all the time. Eddie Niedzwiecki used to come in, and you just get this one. Like, come here, one of those, try and keep it quiet. Finger. The moment he does that, you dropped, you know full well. So, but you have to go in and see the gaffer, and he has to he explains his decision of why you're getting dropped. And yeah, that's part and parcel of football.
Well, the curly finger is rarely positive, is it?
Rarely
You're not delivering
positive.
Good news with a curly finger, are you? It's bad.
Generally, yeah, it's probably going to be ending not good news.
It's quite a subtle gesture, isn't it? It's just, you could imagine someone beckoning with the whole arm, with the whole palm, but the index finger is quite menacing.
But to give you a little insight, though, you've got to remember the ideal one is you want to catch eyes, really, and it's just a subtle reminder, because you don't want to embarrass. I never try and embarrass players. I'd never, a little nod. I don't like embarrassing players. I didn't want to be embarrassed as a player myself, so I try and be subtle and just, like the old favourite, it's awful. You have to do it sometimes. You send one of your coaches into the first area, Crouchy will tell you, they come in and go, big man, gaffer wants a word. And everyone go, oh, here we go. and you go out thinking, shit. It's like the headmaster's called you. So no one wants that. So if you can just in the group, or you're wandering off the training ground, just give someone a nod, little curly finger, and go, listen, pop up, and have a word.
Do you still do the wheel of misfortune?
Yeah, we do, mate. We played around. We bought in a few. We sort of mixed bagged it. So we went for a stage of forfeits and fines. Then it was fines only. Now it's back to forfeits and fines. So we bought a few of the old.
So what is the wheel of misfortune?
This is years ago when we first got to the club. We found that the usual thing up till Christmas, players are on each other about their professionalism. A few fines get in, then they have a night out, and it all stops. So I went, right, we need something to change itself. We need to keep, because we were trying to build a culture and environment then. Obviously, I'd only been there a couple of months. So Mark Howard said to me, he said, look, I've heard this idea in rugby where they get this kind of wheel, so they sort of have forfeits. Simple line that I ran with. I went, right, yeah, I'm having that. So we got our own wheel. We put letters on it for the forfeits, numbers on it for the players, obviously. And then you just spin. I mean, I remember Joey lying in a river. That people doing our local river. Yeah, we had people doing washing each other's cars. We've had lap dances. Singing was always one. Boy band, we've had boy bands, so you have to then spin, right? So say Crouchy gets it, he has to come up and spin for his two other band members. Trust me, the lads are going mental. The lads are going mental, going, no, please no. My favourite one of all time, though, and I've never told anyone who it was, but the lads know who it was. There's two, actually. One was a lap dance. One player did a lap dance for another lap dance. It's the best lap dance I think I've ever seen. Not that I've seen any, by the way. I must let all the children out there, I don't do that sort of thing. Crouchy does that. Yeah, in the films. That's it, in the films, yeah. But yeah, it was the best I've ever seen. It was just unbelievable. It was properly like standing ovation stuff. We were like, oh my goodness, that must be, you should do that for your missus. She'll be with you for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the other one, and I don't mind telling you this one, he'll kill me for it, but it was hilarious, was we do this thing, we have to do keepy ups, right? So every keepy up that you fail to do below 50, so you have to get to 50, will be like a fiver. So Michael Duff, he dropped it, toe bunked it straight away. And the lads the lads were rolling on the floor. So he got one. That was it. Just literally toe bunked his first touch about 10 yards away. The lads were crying, absolutely crying. When we first did that one, we got, like a weighted ball. So inside had a weight in it. So they dropped it and it went boom, flying off. And we
that's good.
Just simple stuff with the lads, you know what I mean? Just to give them, and it gives them, what it does, it brings a bit of feel, light-hearted, a bit jovial, it keeps people on their toes a little bit.
Who picks it up?
We do, because that's all we've really got. I mean, that's why I play 4-4-2, because I've got nothing else to offer on the pitch. So we just talk about forfeits. That's it. That's how we win. That's how we develop players. We just go 4-4-2, and by the way, get on the forfeits.
What was Joey Barton, when he say Joey Barton had to lie in a river, did he have to totally immerse himself?
Burnley's not the warmest place, and there's a river that runs by it, which goes to our training ground. It's like one of them weird rivers that it could be 25 degrees, which is not there very often, but the river's about -4 all year round. So, we just as a forfeit, you'd have to climb in the river and stay in there for like a minute, to lay down in the river, because it's only shallow. We've had all teams in there. We've had a whole team. Like if they lose the five-a-side on a Friday, they have to go in the river and all stuff like that.
Get in the river.
Just a bit of fun. Build a bit of fun. Build a bit of energy to the performances and the games, and it just another thing that just locks in a group mentality. And I've had people really into it and laud me for it, and I've others say that's all he's got to offer. He's rubbish, and as you can imagine, it hurts me deeply, and I care deeply about what everyone else thinks.
We're talking about the Sean Dyche curly finger. Well, have you heard of the Sean Dyche Bitmoji?
What's this?
I think it's the best emoji I think I've ever received. The emoji looks more like Sean Dyche than Sean Dyche. Do you want to see it?
Oh, right. So the emojis, you can make them of yourself.
You know the ones you make of yourself?
So you communicate with these emojis, do you, Sean?
You send Crouchy chapter and verse of a message, and you'll be lucky if you get a cheers or a thumbs up back. So he did actually send me a couple of messages, and my daughter had got hold of this thing on my phone where you can make your own emoji of yourself, which I didn't know, obviously, and she was buzzing off it. So my kids were absolutely buzzing off it, saying, "Dad, that is more like you than you." Anyway, so Crouchy does one of these big long messages for once, rare, but for once. So I just literally sent this emoji back. I think he might have even rang me and just went, "That is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant." And we were just rolling around laughing. So it does look like me.
It's an absolute belter. Do you want to see one?
Yeah, show us, Crouchy.
This. Oh my God! It's like a baby with a beard.
It is. It's like a baby. It's like Sean at the age of 18 months with a beard and a really short haircut. Like if a baby was allowed a number one.
Oh no! It's Abby.
Yes,
that's there, isn't it?
Hello, Abby.
She was calling me then, and she's in the next room. That's obviously like you're going on too long now. I'm actually getting the curly finger from Abby now, so I better go. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Sean, I really appreciate it. Top man.
Cheers, Crouchy. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Sean. Crouchy even managed to call you Sean at the end.
I was going to rip him, but because it's his podcast, I thought I can't just destroy him right at the very end. The last thing is me going, by the way, don't call me Sean. You're not on that level.
Can I just apologise, Gaffer? Appreciate that.
That's a fair one, no problem, mate.
Crouch going for the spectacular. Oh, what a goal from Peter Crouch.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Tom, I think Crouchy's coming back. Crouchy, you there?
Yeah, right, lads.
Yeah,
sorry
yes,
about that.
mate. How was the curly finger?
Yeah, it was okay. It was trivial. It was just wrap it up. Your two silly mates can't be going on that long.
Anyway, Crouchy, what's going on with the Ian situation as well? I know this was discussed heavily. I mean, for me, I've had more messages from Ians in the last week than any other name.
It's huge for Ians.
I'm sure you boys are the same.
I've done a little bit of digging, boys. Remarkably, there was a point in about 1993 or 4 where there were 17 different Ians playing in the Premier League. Yeah. In the last 10 years, there's been two Ians in the entire Premier League in the last 10 years.
Ian was a staple of our game. It does seem to be dying out.
The last Ian in the Premier League was Ian Hart at Reading. That was 7 years ago.
Maybe we can get people to start calling their babies Ian again. That's what we need.
I saw this tweet from Philip Taylor. Says, I'm sure I'm not the first to tell you that there was no such name as Wendy until Peter Pan. J.M. Barrie made it up.
This is groundbreaking for me. I went my whole 39 years not knowing.
If I asked you, Chris, to come up with a completely new name now, what would you come up with?
Okay, well, it's just got to be the first ridiculous name that you think of, isn't it?
It's got to be a new name.
Okay,
Todd.
so it's as ludicrous as I don't know.
Todd.
Bango.
That's the thing. It's
I love it. Bango's, that's your name. Bango's a beauty.
Bango's the same as Wendy.
It's so true. Like if Chris wrote a book and one of his characters was called Bango, and it, and it caught on.
What sort of book is this?
There'd be Bangos everywhere.
Yeah, but we're laughing the same way they would have laughed at Wendy. They would have gone, "Oh, Wendy!"
Is it a boy or a girl, Bango?
Well, I don't know. Assuming it's a geezer, but
Okay, well, so Bango has got to be quite an alluring, charismatic character.
Could have a female Bango.
Be my beautiful little girl, Bango.
Little baby Bango Stark.
Bango Stark.
Bango.
This is why I would say it's a good idea, right? If one person names their child Bango, and I'm throwing my hat in the ring here. My problem with calling my baby Bango is you guys are laughing. Do you know what I mean? So what do I do?
When you call yours Bango, are people going to lean over the cot and go, "Yeah, he looks like a Bango"?
Someone should just do a quick check in case we're in. So there'll be some poor Bango listening right now, and
that's what I mean. Like, we're all laughing at his name. There might be one out there.
If you are listening to this and your name is Bango, get in touch. peter.crouch@bbc.co.uk. Tell us the origin of your name. Has it been a good name? Has the world treated you well as Bango?
The reason why this name seems appealing to me, considering we've only thought of it recently, is that the first time someone mentioned Tom, someone would have laughed. The first time someone mentioned Peter, they would have gone, "Are you taking the piss? I'm not calling my baby Peter." I just want to be the first of a long line of Bangos, I guess.
Yeah, you want to be the modern day J.M. Barrie.
Do you know what, boys? Like, the more we've said the word Bango, which is one of those words that made no sense to me at the start, now my ear's getting familiar to it. I quite like it.
Baby Bango.
When Bango grows up, I can see him being the life and soul of the party.
Lads, I feel we've gone slightly off topic, but going back to Ian, we're trying to find the youngest Ian, aren't we? It's a name that's dying out. We've had a few messages from people. Ian Savage has got in touch. He says he's 31. I was I was hoping for a 6-year-old Ian or something.
Well, I've got an Ian called Ian Sterling, who's 26. It's a slight improvement. Unless
either of you two can beat this, from what I've seen so far, the UK's youngest Ian is in Anglesey. His name is Ian Scott. He's 22. Ooh. Which isn't really as young as we were hoping for, but it's
not bad,
I suppose it's at least it's a benchmark.
No, I think listen, I think we were looking for sort of baby Ians, weren't we, really? And 22 is the youngest we've got so far. So if anyone out there, knows a younger Ian, please push him forward. It'd be great to know. Britain's youngest Ian.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Hey, it's Geraint again. So my question for you, Crouchy, is a bit like Annie Mac. Would you rather wear full Lycra cycling gear plus clippy cloppy cleats next time you meet your mates in the pub, or spend the next year treating all selfie requests you get like Roy Keane, telling them to fucking hurry up, you got a plane to catch?
Oh, that's a good question. I like that. Clippy cloppy cleats. I feel bad now.
What a question.
In the answer to this question, I would not be wearing Lycra. No cleats for me. I would have to treat everyone with Roy Keane kind of disdain. Unfortunately, it's not my vibe.
I mean, this has got implications.
But the thing is, I've only got to do it once.
Yeah, the selfie thing is all year. The Lycra clippy cloppy cleats. It's one night out. It's your first big night out with your mates. They will be taking photos, and every time you go to the bar, you're in the Lycra. Every time you go for a pee, and your bladder is weak.
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I don't. It's a really tough question. I didn't think it'd be this tough.
But a whole year of being an arsehole is not a good place to be, Crouchy. So I would take the one night and it's not a fun night for you necessarily, but just wear it. It's one night.
Yeah.
We should consider doing another fancy dress. We've only done one fancy dress podcast so far, haven't we? We did nuns for Tom. Crouchy, I think you should decide the next theme.
Yeah, no, I'm up for that. Maybe we could all cycle when the pub's open. We could all cycle from various parts of where we are, and we could all cycle there in our full cycling gear.
At least nuns was flattering. I can't.
That is true, though. The thing about a habit, the way a habit hangs, is it covers a multitude of sins. Ironically, doesn't it?
You could cycling. Can I just bring up a slight point of information as well, just because I know we're towards the end of this podcast? I mentioned before we should try and get Banksy on the podcast. And I know it's a very outlandish thing to say. I would like to kind of continue this idea because there must be someone listening that has some kind of connection to Banksy, and it's not. We're not really expecting him to come on the podcast, but it would be awesome to get involved one way or another. He was at one of your first QPR games, Crouchy.
Yeah.
And also, if we're going to get anyone to pass the pod, surely he is the ultimate person to get to do it.
I can imagine it on the wall, can't you? Just pass the pod or something in a
little
Banksy
robot
way.
Do you think people pose as Banksy? Like on a night out, you'll get someone who just claims to be someone they're not.
Have you got an impersonator, Crouchy? Have you ever actually looked into this?
When we were at the World Cup, I remember I was in a restaurant sitting there with my family, mum and dad and sister, and I saw this fella outside in a full England kit, seen me go in or whatever, and then people are waiting outside for me to come out of the restaurant, and then this Peter Crouch lookalike they were going to take a picture of me next to him. I don't know what they were hoping to achieve by it, but I managed to escape him, and I just got in the car, I looked at him and thought, what a strange job.
So does someone say to you, Mr. Crouch, we think you should leave by the back door. There is a man pretending to be you out
just
the front.
Yeah. But I thought to myself, what has happened to my life here where there's someone dressed up as me in a full England kit and boots outside a restaurant? And so
why was he wearing the England kit? It's not like you wear an England kit away from the pitch. Why did he not just wear what you'd be wearing?
So good.
That's the flaw in his plan, as if you're going to go out for a meal in Baden-Baden
and he's just kicking around outside, warming up, waiting for Crouchy.
He was hiding behind a bush, waiting to jump out on me. It was so weird.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Here we go. Look, Tom's back, raring to go. We banned him last week from promoting any other pods, so this week he's chomping at the bit.
Boys, I thought I'd keep it in the family. On the basis how good he was with us last episode, I thought we'd promote Louis' pod, Louis Theroux's Grounded podcast.
Yeah, good idea.
Interviewed Troy Deeney, Chris, the other day, which I know you'll like. Yeah. Download it now on BBC Sounds, Louis Theroux's Grounded.
Yeah, I think that's fair play, actually. Yeah, we'll allow this one, Tom.
He was on good form. I'm going to tune into that. I think I'm going to have it. I'd like to hear it. Troy Deeney, he's interesting, I chatted to him recently, and he's good value. So I think that'd be a good one.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.